Hello, everyone. Tom here, back with another episode of Mortgage Tech Talks. This is going to be another solo episode. I know in the past couple solo episodes that I've done, I focus more on some of these market updates. Not going to do that today. Instead, I'm going to do a little bit of specific advice, things that I think will be very valuable and very applicable to anybody in the mortgage business. What that is I'm going to go through my top 3 email templates that I use that have the highest open rates. And so really it starts at our number one email has an open rate of about 90%. And then we go down to emails that have an open rate of about 70%, which is still crazy high. And so kind of walk through those, what those templates look like, how you can use them, and really why I think they have such a high open rate. So it's a cool episode. It's super applicable. You can implement this tomorrow and I think you're really going to like it. So join us there. We'll see you on the other side. Truth maybe is that every time you put a document in an email, that is the most vulnerable place. All right, let's get right into it here. So super excited for today's episode to go through some of my top templates. Let's get started right off the bat. Number one, this one is crazy. It has an open rate. So how many times someone opens it? Of about 90%. That's crazy when you think about really the average is around 20% for an email. 90% is so high. And, to be able to achieve something like that, it's got to be a pretty specific, pretty targeted email. So what is the email? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's the email that gets sent after you've closed a deal with a client, but you're actually sending it to the client's referrer. So let's just say, for example, Tom is your client and Sally referred Tom to you. This is the email that you're sending to Sally afterwards, basically saying, thank you very much. In the email that I'm looking at, we actually have a little bit of a perk, just basically saying, hey, because you referred this client, we wanted to say thank you. And here's a little closing gift to go with it. And so, yeah, it's a pretty simple email. I think it makes sense, of course, why it's probably a pretty highly opened email. People like to get those little gifts, those little things. And, in the emails that we see, the crazy thing is that it's not like some game changing gift, right? It's not something that if someone opens it, their financial picture has suddenly dramatically changed. It's pretty small. It's pretty simple. I think just the human nature, it's just people love that little boost, that little hit of dopamine to be able to see that come across the inbox. It's incredibly powerful. And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be much. It just has to say, hey, thank you. Here's, the way that I am saying thank you. And, given that it has such a high open rate, it's a great place to really load in not a ton of stuff because you want to keep it to the point, but maybe just a PS or something like that to say, hey, and by the way, if you have anyone else, we'd love to work with you again. Hey, this is actually what we do more regularly, or this is how we like to work with our partners. Let me know what you think. It's a great way to just kind of throw something like that and sprinkle it in because it has such a high open rate. Okay, we're going to keep going. We are going to go to next number 2. Again, this one seems pretty obvious, but I love it. And I think it speaks to a huge opportunity I think a lot of people have that people aren't taking advantage of. So what is number 2 on my list? Well, number 2 on my list is meeting reminders and follow-ups. So there's kind of 2. It's kind of like, 2A and 2B here. But starting with 2A, meeting reminder, this has about an 85% open rate in our experience. So again, super high, not quite 90, but it's pretty high, 85. And again, it's pretty straightforward. I have an example in front of me, and it's really something like this. Usually I do it at 8 a.m., first thing in the morning, to say, hey, as a friendly reminder, we have a meeting today at 3 p.m., 4 p.m. So if you're doing meetings on Calendly, maybe a discovery call with a client, something like that, and it's something that you book in the calendar and you have it coming up that day, it's a great reminder to do at the beginning of the day. So 85% open rate, that's pretty big. You get that engagement. We see a huge increase, of course, people showing up to the meeting. So you have just much more productive day. And then also you have great engagement too. If people see that and they open it and they understand it and they can't make it, they can respond quickly. And again, that just adds to the efficiency of your day. And so, yeah, it's a simple one again, but very, very powerful. And then the 2B I talked about was as I described it, the follow-up afterwards. So this can be both automated and manual. And I'll talk about both in a sec. But really, again, it's, okay, let's continue that scenario that we talked about. So you've booked some time with someone to do a discovery call. You say, let's do it tomorrow sometime. You see on the calendar, you send that reminder email. They've clicked it. They see it. They show up to me and you have a great conversation. There's a follow-up email that goes out afterwards. That has about a 75% open rate. again, super, super high. Again, our benchmark is 20%. So anything above 20 is above average. And this is about almost 4 times higher than that. So it's still pretty impressive. People like that. People are coming off a call. They have a lot of energy. They probably have, a good conversation. They're feeling jazzed about it. And they see your email and they're really quick to do it. And so the key with those open rates, I think it's a little bit of an asterisk I want to put here, because for us, we send it within, I would say, 15, maybe 30 minutes, right? So it does have to be quick. If you're sending that follow up 4 hours later, people aren't reading it. You send it the next morning, forget about it. So it has to be quick. And so, yeah, that gets to the point of, okay, then do I automate this or do it manually? Of course, manual is a nice way to do it because you can do those details. Hey, this is what we talked about. These are the next steps. You can really load those things up. But I would almost rather a situation where you're getting an automated email off and it's quick. So if you feel maybe you have a busy day or the type of person who really wants to take their time, maybe a couple hours, really think about what was said and want to put together a very sophisticated manual email, then I would suggest a two-prong approach. And so for that situation, I would say start with an automated email that just says, hey, thanks so much for the call. Just want to say I'm putting together the next steps. You'll get an email from me shortly. Just that acknowledgement that gets out there, that continues that conversation, keeps it going. And then, later that evening, something like that, you can do the follow up. It's just a nice touch. It lets the client know that you're on it, things are on track, and things are going well. So, unless you can do that manual email very quickly and you're a super writer and can do it in 15 minutes and get it off, maybe do that two-step approach. Automated, just saying thanks, and then later that evening or the next morning, whatever, a detailed email explaining what's going on. My bonus tip for this is that this, yes, applies, of course, for meetings. That's what we've been talking about. But another one that we have, this is about a 70% open rate, so still quite a bit above that 20%, but you can see it's coming down a bit, is in-person events. So we have one that we send out after trade shows, right? So trade shows are a crazy time. If you're a broker, you're going to maybe a real estate show or whatever it might be, maybe just a local community, whatever it might be, and you go out and you meet a ton of people, and it's a great time. Maybe you get some business cards. It takes a whole bunch of different forms, but these in-person events, I think, are valid for this. And so what we do and where we get that 70% open rate is we, do that networking, whether it is, a networking event or a trade show. We load it up all in our system very quickly. And then an automated email the very next day at like 9 a.m., we just say, hey, it's great meeting you yesterday. It's, again, super simple. Start by saying, hey, this is Tom from X, right? So this is Tom from ABC Mortgage Co. It's great meeting yesterday. If you have time to chat in the next week, I'd love to catch up. Super simple. You're not assuming anything. You're just saying it was nice to meet you. And getting out at 9 a.m. the next morning is really essential. I've gotten emails, follow-ups from trade shows like a week later. It's like, who are you? What is this conversation? Where did we meet? Like, it just doesn't work. It needs to be within 24 hours at the very latest. And if you do, you can get that 70% open rate. Okay, so that was number 2, kind of 2A, 2B. The last one that I'm going to talk about is something a little bit more transactional. This one clocks in, again, around that 70% open rate. And what it is, this is a new lead email that we've seen people send out. We send out something like this. And keep in mind, when I say that 70% open rate, and this is a new lead campaign, these are people that we've never talked to before. These aren't someone, it's, again, Tom, your client, and you have a meeting on the calendar and all you're doing is reminding them of that email. You've already built that relationship maybe. These are sometimes cold people who maybe have just had an introduction or maybe reached out online if you have an online presence, and you're just kind of following up. And so to get a 70% open rate on pretty cold people, people who don't really know you, who don't really maybe trust you just yet, it's pretty impressive. So what is it? The email is super simple. It's a social proof email. So the one that we send goes something like this: XYZ people. Usually that XYZ should be people similar to your borrower. So if you do focus on a certain niche, maybe you're working specifically with first-time home buyers, or maybe you're working with investors, whatever that niche might be. Now, if you're not in a niche, it still works, but let's just go with that example. So something like this: investors just like you have been thrilled with our service. And literally the email is just review, something that people can read through and understand very quickly the type of service you provide for people like them. So that's the one we send, and we get that 70% open rate where it is a little bit more niche, a little bit more targeted. If you aren't so narrow in your scope of the type of borrowers that you work with, you can, of course, make it a bit more generic. You can have the subject line of, hear what clients are saying, something like that. I don't think you'll get the 70% open rate because honestly, it's not going to hit as hard, or it's not going to resonate as well as someone seeing that come across. versus, hey, you're an investor. We work with investors. This is the results that we get. Maybe you won't get that 70%, but I still think it'd be relatively, pretty high. So that's it, really. I mean, I think that, just to kind of recap, this is a quicker episode, I think, but hopefully this gives some of those hard hitting facts of kind of how you can take some pretty simple ideas, implement them in a very specific way, and have some great results. And so, yeah, just as a quick recap of what we've gone through, the very first one, our 90+% open rate, it's crazy. It's the thank you email. It's a, hey, here's your bonus gift, closing gift to the refer post closing. Number 2A, 2B are those meeting reminders beforehand, and then the follow-ups afterwards. You can do that, of course, for meetings, but also in-person events. And then the third one here, this is a new lead email hitting that 70%, is the social proof. I mean, honestly, social proof is so, so powerful. It's really how I think a lot of humans make their decisions. Sometimes for better, for worse, it's not from first principles, but it's saying, hey, if someone I know or someone like me has had a good experience, I'll probably have that same type of experience. It's the way humans are. And I think at the very least, we should take advantage of it. And so that's pretty much it there. If you do have any questions on any of these templates, or if you want specifics, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Love to hear from you. But that's really it for today. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, guys.